my name's Natasha and welcome to Natasha's Notes, a place where I talk about things that I enjoy. And today it's books. And apologies for my dog sniffing here. She seems to have, I think she thinks that there's a crumb or something for her. Anyway, this is Holly. She won't be here for long, I'm sure. Today I'm going to talk to you about the last 10 books that I've read. I usually do this in books of 5, in batches of 5, but unfortunately I've fallen a little bit behind, or I've actually been reading more than I anticipated. Sorry, am I boring you already? Oh. These are books number 41 to 50 that I've read in the year 2020. So I'm just going to get straight into it. I have more information on my Goodreads and I will link that below. So obviously please go over there, follow me, friend me, whatever. I'll follow you back too. And yeah, this is just some of the books that I've read. There's a lot of really good books that I enjoyed, to be honest. I've had a really good run of books. A lot of them are, well, I've got quite a few arcs as well, but they are now out and available for everybody. So first off, I'm going to start with Kissing Tolstoy. That is by Penny Reid. And I listened to the audiobook of this on Scribd. Scribd is one of the best things that I've ever done, I've realised. I love it. And I can't believe I was so late to the Scribd party. And in this book we follow Anna and Professor Luca. And I think Anna is given an email by a friend to email this guy to go for a date. This guy turns up and he's, you know, on a motorbike, full leather gear, and this isn't the sort of character that she was told that she would be meeting on this blind date. Anyway, they have a bit of a chat and a bit of a date, and that's kind of that. It doesn't really go too well. And then Anna takes a summer Russian literature course, and the guy that she met, this hot guy, turns out to be her Russian literature professor, and the rest is history. It's quite a short book. I think it's less than 200 pages, and it was just a quick, easy read. It's a series. I haven't read the next one in the series, but it was a little bit, yeah, a little bit naughty, but not too, it wasn't too smutty or too rude, and I really enjoyed it, actually. So I gave that 4 stars. Right. We've got rid of Holly. She's too much of a distraction for me, and she wanted me to just massage her, and I can't do that and think at the same time. So the next book, as I said, is Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna Maguire, and in this we follow some children at a school for children that have let's say special children, and these children have all travelled through a doorway to another world, to other worlds, and these children are at this school because their parents want them to go back to who they were before they disappeared, or they think they're crazy, or just they just can't handle the way in which them going and disappearing and going into these other worlds has changed them. So some of them actually even have no family, and so they're all together, and the children at this particular school want to find their excuse me, the children at this particular school want to find their way back to their worlds. I believe there are other schools that are children who don't want to go back to their worlds, or other situations, but in this particular school they all want to go find their way back. It was short, it was a bit strange and weird, it was kind of spooky. There's a bit of a murder mystery going on, and this is the first in a series, and I really enjoyed it. I found that it was too short. I wanted more information, I wanted to know more in this particular book, so I will continue with the series, and I gave it 3.5. I was debating whether to give it 4, but I gave it 3.5 stars. But the whole star thing is a bit weird, really, because sometimes I look back and I see that I gave a book 4, but actually it wasn't. I don't know, it's all a bit odd, isn't it? But anyway, basically I really enjoyed it, and I will be continuing this series. Book number 43 was an e-arc that I received, and this is The Gravity of Us by Phil Stamper, and I adore the cover of this book. I think it's beautiful, and in this book we follow Cal, who lives in New York, and he's a bit of an influencer. He streams stuff, and he's got a social media following, and his dad applies to be to NASA to be on the next mission to Mars. His dad gets accepted to be part of the mission, but it doesn't necessarily he'll be the one to go to Mars. He's just part of the group of people who'll go through all the training. And so then they all move, the family moved to Texas, and obviously Cal didn't want to do this, obviously. Cal is no longer allowed to, or he's told that he can't upload anything anymore, because there is a production company that's doing like a reality TV type series alongside the whole mission. And so they have priority or access to all the content, and he's not allowed to upload anymore, or so he's told. The astronauts live in this community together, and there's a family down the road or in the community called the Tuckers, and they're the only family that have other teens in this community. So Cal and the Tuckers hang out together, and there's a guy and a girl, as well as a lot of the NASA things that are going on. There's sort of drama and death and issues with the production company and things like that. And so it's quite a good book, but there's some positives. So it approaches a lot of things that I think is really important in a YA book, or just in any books really. So it approaches death, anxiety, depression, male-male romance. There are some strong lead female characters, which I really appreciated. But one of the negatives is that I didn't really warm to Cal, the main protagonist. I thought he was selfish and he was very flawed, and I mean that made him more of a real character, but it meant that I didn't warm to him, and I potentially didn't really enjoy his story or reading about him very much. There were some other bits that I didn't really like very much, but it was still an enjoyable book, and oh yeah, and of course I like space stuff. I've got my space camp t-shirt on today. And so I enjoyed many aspects of it, but it was a 3.5 star for me, but I rounded it up to 4 stars for Goodreads. So it's a good book, but I'm not sure it's one that I would rave and tell many people that they absolutely have to read. This book was number 44, and this was Project Hero by Briar Prescott. This was another e-arc, and this was one of the biggest surprises of the year so far for me. So in this book we follow Andy. He's 22 and he's at college, and he lives with his best friend Falcon, and two of Falcon's friends from his basketball team. Falcon's really sort of popular and sporty and all the things like that, and Andy's a bit more nerdy, I guess you'd say. Yeah, Falcon's all cool and people really like him, and Andy's more I guess you'd say unseen, and he is in love or has had feelings for his best friend Falcon for years. I think they come from the same town, and they kind of grew up together for many years. The hockey team are failing physics, and if they don't pass the class, then they're not going to be able to play. And so there's an ex-player who is now the coach of the and he said cocky. Okay. There's an ex-player who is now the coach of the hockey team, and his name's Law, and he recruits Andy to tutor the team for the summer, because Andy's obviously, lots of people recommend him for training, and the story kind of goes from there, and it becomes more about Andy and Law and the ways that they're trying to sort of help each other out, and also Andy just being besotted with Falcon. Falcon goes back home for the summer, and so that's when Andy is tutoring the hockey team. And this is the biggest surprise. I think it was at least a 4.5 stars for me. I gave it 5. It's quite steamy and quite naughty. I didn't mind. I loved it. I enjoyed it. It got me all hot under the collar. I was really invested in the characters. I loved sort of the openness. There's obviously, given that the 3 main characters are male, so there's male-male romances and relationships. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this book, far more than I expected, and it's kind of one of the ones that stuck in my head the most, and I guess it's because it was a surprise and an unexpected thing. I didn't anticipate that I was going to enjoy it anywhere near as much as what I did. It was just a really easy, fun read. I would love to hear more about these characters, and I would potentially even reread it. I think this is an e-arc that I read, oh gosh, maybe a month, at least a month ago, and I'm not sure when it's out, but if it isn't already out, then I will let you know when the release date is, because a lot of books are getting pushed back right now. So book number 45 was another e-arc, but it is available now and it's out, and it's called The Last Tang Standing, and it's by Lauren Ho. And in this book we follow Andrea Tang, and Andrea Tang is in her 30s and she's a Chinese lady. But she is in her 30s and she's a single Chinese lady, and her family do not appreciate that. It's not something that her family are happy about. They belittle and make a big deal about the fact that she's single. And but she's a lawyer, and she's focused on making partner in this law firm. There's a few love interests, there's a big circle of friends and lots of stuff going on with that, and then there's an office full of like cutthroat people, so there's lots of office dynamics things going on, and she shares an office with a guy as well, and he's involved in the story too. A lot of people or the blurb describes it as Bridget Jones's Diary meets Crazy Rich Asians, and I think that's probably a fair thing to say, because I have a lead female character, and then we have a lot of the Asian influence and things like that. I believe Lauren Ho was originally grew up in Malaysia, I think, so there's a lot of that going on, and it's quite an enjoyable book. However, for me personally, I found Andrea to be quite annoying and quite self-absorbed, and I basically just wanted to shake her and be like, for fuck's sake, get your head out of your arse and stop just going through the motions and get your shit together, pull yourself together. She was frustrating as a character, just someone that just plods and just goes through the motions. And maybe I'm in my Goodreads, I think I said that obviously that shows that I'm not really very maternal and very supportive here. I'm not very patient, but the frustrations I had with Andrea is the reason why I only gave it 3.5 stars instead of 4. It just, yeah, because we focus around her so much, that kind of made me a little bit frustrated. But then the more I think about it, having a flawed character is a bit more true. Like, Bridget Jones isn't perfect, none of us are perfect, so I don't know why I guess I just didn't see myself in her in some ways, and maybe that was the way that there was a disconnect. It was a good book, I enjoyed it, but it was just that frustration that that held back a little bit of an extra 0.5 star there for me. But if you like, you know, if you want something that's Crazy Rich Asians meets Bridget Jones, this would be right up your street. Book number 46 is Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren, and I read a physical copy of this, but I've already passed it on to somebody else who really wanted to read it, so I sent it to her. This was a solid 4 stars for me, I'll tell you up front, and I loved it. I believe that it was Christina Lauren's first foray into women's literature. Their other books have been a bit more YA based or very sort of smutty based, and I don't care that it was their first foray. It was just, I enjoyed it. I read a lot of what they write and I enjoy the way they write. In this book we follow Macy and Elliot, and they had this intense friendship or relationship for about 5 years when they were teens. Then they've been estranged for 11 years, and then they bump into each other in a coffee shop. The chapters alternate between then and now, and and that was good because we are learning about them as teens and then about them as adults, and so it ties the two together. I know a lot of people connect to them as teens more than adults, or vice versa. But I think you needed the background of the teen story in order to appreciate them as adults. You needed that sort of background, and I think the teen story was actually far more developed than the adult story. it's the kind of, the only one thing I would say is it's one of those no one in the world makes me feel this way other than you sort of love, and I don't know, I'm a little bit about that. But it's a slow burn, it's really beautiful. It's focused a lot around books, so they meet and they read together, and as teens, and they hang out, and it's really a lot about them reading. They have this excuse me, so they connect through books, and they have a word game where they I guess they just say, what's your favorite word, and then they explain, you know, and then that's their way of explaining what's on their mind or how they're feeling. And I think that's a really sweet way for them as individuals to explain if they feel uncomfortable about something. And certain times just one word makes you smile, and they don't go into it any further. But it isn't all sweetness and light. It covers grief and death of a parent, and there's something that happens then that I believe was overlooked too quickly. It was forgiven too quickly, and for me, or it was brushed over, and for me that would be far more of an issue. I don't quite know how to explain that without going into spoiler territory, but anyway, overall this book, I really enjoyed it actually. I don't think I would reread it, which is why I passed it on to somebody else, but it just, I don't know, it stuck with me. So that one, as I said, was a solid 4 stars for me. The next book was another E-arc, and this is Alma Underwood is Not a Kleptomaniac, and this is by Lacey Daly. But even though it was sent to me as an E-arc, it actually is already out, and I think it came out in 2019, so I don't quite know what happened there. But anyway, Alma works in her parents' motel outside of school hours, and she collects these treasures, what she calls, is things that people have left behind. And a lot of people think she's weird, because these treasures can be like a broken camera or a shoe or whatever. And one day she stumbles across Rumour, this guy, and he's a homeless, one-handed teen who's run away from his hometown after his dad's death. And I thought this book was going to be, I don't know what I was expecting it to be, but it is actually a little bit more, not quite dark, but it's not as sweetness and light as what I thought it was going to be. But it is sweet, and there are lovely moments, and they're just between Alma and Rumour and other characters. Alma's family are very quirky, and they each have individual quirks about them, but they all accept each other for their individual differences and things, and I really appreciated that. It was lovely actually. It is tough because there are some quite real storylines in it. I would say that you should look into it further if you are triggered by things like grief, loss of a parent, depression, suicide. There's a lot of things that could be triggering in this YA book. I would say overall that it's a YA book that has some romance, but it focuses on strong friendships and relationships between, you know, individuals and families and everything. I think it's a really lovely book, and I gave it 4 stars. Yeah, it just wasn't the surface level sweetness and light that I thought I was going in for, but that's not a bad thing. So that was a bit of a surprise for me too. We change pace a little bit with book number 48, and this book is called The Secret to Dating Your Best Friend's Sister, and this is by Megan Quinn. Now, I'll be completely honest, and sometimes I judge a book by its cover, and this book, it isn't a cover that I would choose. It's not my sort of book. And this was recommended to me, and so I thought I'll give it a go. And I think it was free. Kindle Unlimited, no, not Kindle. It's free in Kindle Unlimited, Kindle Prime, that was it. So I didn't have to pay for it, it was free, and it was recommended. So I thought, right, I'll give it a go. And I was wrong to judge because this book was actually quite fun. So there's two guys called Wrath and Bram, and they are best friends, and Julia is Wrath's sister, and they all know each other because they went to university at Yale, and the book is based 10 years later in New York, when they're all in New York, and it's a fun light read, and it was perfect for lockdown. And this book is about Wrath's sister Julia and his best mate Bram. Bram's really into Julia. Julia has no idea. And Julia's focused, like, they're all really successful, of course they are, and Julia's setting up this business, or has this business of matchmaking people, but in a weird, quirky way. She I shouldn't say weird and quirky, but just in a different way to the way that people would traditionally do it. She studied sort of psychology and other things at university, I think, or she at least studied people quite a lot, because she wasn't big and in the crowd and out there. She was sort of more of a person that would be found standing in the background and analysing and watching people, and she's taken all of this to be part of her business, her matchmaking business. And Bram loses a bet. No, he doesn't. Bram loses the fantasy football league, and part of his forfeit is that he has to sign up to Julia's business and to try to be matched to somebody. And I think he's a bit of a player, and he's just not really committed to anybody. So I was reeled in from the start, and there's sort of a bit of drama towards the end, and the ending were really lackluster, and that's why for me I reduced it from a 4 to a 3.5 for me, because I was well into it all the way through, and then it was just a bit meh at the end. It just, I don't know, I didn't really enjoy all of that last part of the book quite as much. But, you know, like I said, it's a fun, perfect read. It is an adult book. There's a lot of discussions about sex and things like that. But it was just a light, fun, perfect lockdown read, and I judged the book by its cover, and I was wrong. I'm sorry, I've just realised I'm sat in front of my patio doors in the garden, and I've probably got an almighty reflection on my glasses, so apologies if that's really annoying for you. I can take them off in future if it is an issue. Okay, number 49, book number 49 was Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, and this book has been sat on my shelf for a long time waiting for me to read it, and I'd heard that it's very much like Harry Potter-ish, and I don't think I was ready to read it. Now I realise that I've actually read it in the wrong order. It doesn't matter, but it's a companion novel to Fangirl, and I think a lot of people read Fangirl first, because in Fangirl there's a woman writing a book, and these are the characters, and this is the book that she was writing. But it doesn't matter, I will go back, because I've got Fangirl as well, and I'll go back and read that. But in this book here we have Simon Snow, who's the chosen one, and but he can't control his power of magic. It's just all intense, massive power. And so he doesn't really do that much magic, in all honesty. He's kind of, they say he's the worst chosen one ever to be chosen. And he's at a wizarding school, and his roommate is Baz, and Baz is rumoured to be a vampire. And Baz is evil, and they don't really kind of get on very much. And there's a circle of friends, they're at a magic school, it's got, you know, the pupils and younger people fighting the baddies rather than the adults and the teachers, and there's a bit of romance. I would say it's lesser fantastical than Harry Potter, and that's totally fine, that's acceptable to me. There's a male-male romance, which I'm here for. There's other sort of relationships as well, and it was just good old fun. I really enjoyed it. I know there is a second book in this series, I think, that has more mixed reviews, but I just thought it was good. I'm not going to try and tear it apart, not going to try and compare it. I'm just going to read it as a book as it is, not trying to, you know, read it and compare it to Harry Potter or anything like that. It's just Oh, I don't know. It makes me smile. I really enjoyed it. I can't remember if I gave this 4.5 stars or not, something around that. But it was good, and I'm here for it. And I will be reading Wayward Son, or whatever it is, the next book. But I think I should read Fangirl as well at some point soon. It's not a small book. This is like over 500 pages, so it's beefier than I expected. But I got through it pretty quickly, and I really enjoyed it. Okay. And the final book we have is Perfect Record by Mary H.K. Choi. Before I get into the book, I'm just going to say that I really like Mary H.K. Choi just from the fact that her Twitter is called Choi to the World, and I love puns, and that makes me smile. Anyway, let me get on to the book. So in this book we follow Pablo, and he works in a bodega in New York, and it's like some health food place, and Lee is this mega pop juggernaut type woman, Leanna, I think. Yeah, Leanna, but she gets called Lee. And this is the story of them meeting at this bodega, and I thought it was going to be the story of them and their relationship, because that's how it's portrayed. You know, you just say it on the back, it just says Pablo, Lee, and then when they meet. And it talks about things getting complicated, and yes it does, and yes it is a lot about those two, but actually in my opinion it's more about families, about being mixed heritage, about not knowing what you want in life, mental health. It was just different from what I expected, from what I'd heard, from what the blurb on the back makes out, and even the cover. I looked at this and thought it was going to be just very romance based, but actually it was a real honest YA read, and it was far deeper and less romantic than what I thought, and I really enjoyed it, and I maybe got more from it than I would have done as a romance. I just kind of went into it with different expectations, and I think that affected, as I was reading it, what I was thinking. You know, when you have a certain expectation of a book and it turns into something else, or it ends up being something different, then I don't take it at face value because I have an opinion of what I think it's going to be like. So I enjoyed this, and actually I've enjoyed it more having finished it and taken a step back from it, and I think it's a really good read, and I think people would enjoy it more if they understood that it isn't just a romance. There is a lot of romance and a lot of elements of these two characters, but it's mainly focusing on Pablo, and there's a lot more to it than it just being a romance. I thought it was a really good book actually, and I liked that it tackled certain topics, and I really liked a lot of Pablo's family and his friends, and it was a much more wholesome, rounded book than I anticipated it to be. It was just different, and that different isn't bad, so I enjoyed that a lot, and I can't remember what I gave it. I think I give everything 4 stars when I enjoy it more than, I would say for me 3 is pretty average. Like, it's just it's a good book, but I would probably maybe not it wouldn't be that necessarily that memorable a book. 4's a I really enjoyed it, good, and then 5's a I'd read it again. I really like it. I would recommend it to people. So that's kind of where I'm at with my star rating. So there we go. Thank you for sticking with me if you've made it to the end. That was the last 10 books I read, and I think I got some pretty good books out of those. I enjoyed, I think, all of them. There's none that I would say that I wouldn't recommend anybody read, so if you have any interest in them, obviously check them out. If you want to hear any more of what I said, or maybe read it in a more eloquent way where I've thought about it a little bit more, then check out my Goodreads, subscribe, whatever, follow me on Instagram. If you've got a Bookstagram, I'm always looking to follow more book Instagram accounts, so come follow me and I will follow you back. I'll come and have a look, and I'm at Natasha's_notes, so at Natasha's notes with an underscore between the two, and I'm really enjoying that Instagram account. Actually, it's a lot of fun, and I'm liking the feed and following more people. Books is just one of my favourite things. My dogs have their own Instagram too, because dogs are also one of my favourite things. In fact, I scroll through my dog's Instagram their home feed, just whenever I need a bit of a pick-me-up, because to just see pages and pages of beautiful scrolling for forever of lovely dogs' faces just cheers me up and makes my day better. Even on a good day, it makes it even better. Yes, so anyway, thank you for watching. Take care, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.